And this next story is difficult to watch, even tougher to believe. A Good Samaritan on the streets of New York City sees someone in distress and steps in to help. But when he becomes the victim for helping, no one steps up for him, with tragic consequences. Global National's Paul Johnson has the story and a warning. Some viewers may find the pictures disturbing.
Police say he was a Good Samaritan. 31-year-old Hugo tailed Yaks, stabbed as he tried to protect a woman from a mugger. This surveillance tape shows him bleeding to death on the sidewalk as 25 people passed him by. In that hour and 20 minutes, one man takes a cell phone picture, another actually lifts his body, sees the blood, and walks away. By the time paramedics got there, it was too late.
The term bystander effects refers to the phenomenon in which the greater the number of people present, the less likely people are to help the person in distress. When an emergency situation occurs, observers are more likely to take action if there are few or no other witnesses.
Ilan Alami was a French Jew who was kidnapped in Paris by Moroccan barbarians, as they like to be called, on January 21, 2006 and tortured for 24 days, finally dying on February 13th. During this time, his kidnappers, at least 20 of them, beat him all over his body, especially his testicles, completely wrapped his head in duct tape except for his mouth so he can breathe and eat, stabbed him, burned his body and face with lighters and cigarettes, and broke his fingers in order to extract a ransom of 450,000 euros from his family. They stripped him, they scratched him, they cut him with knives, and finally poured gasoline on him and set him afire. During these 3 weeks, neighbors in the apartment block where his kidnappers had taken him heard the commotion and came to watch. No one ever called the police. 27 people have so far been charged with joining in. 19 people have been convicted and given long prison sentences. One of the torturer's fathers knew what was happening and did nothing to stop them. This man, Alcino Ribeiro, was sentenced to 8 months, but his sentence was suspended. He has served no time. Those neighbors, known only to have watched, were not convicted, most not even indicted. Alami was found handcuffed and bound with nylon rope, naked to a tree about 40 yards inside a woodlot from a railway outside Paris on February 13th. More than 80% of his body had been burned with acid as well as gasoline, to the point that he was difficult to recognize. He had severe contusions, blood blisters, and hematomas covering most of his body, to the point that he was more blue than flesh-colored. Multiple broken bones, one ear, and one big toe missing, and his testicles looked like blackened oranges. Alami died en route to a hospital.
The events that transpired on the night of October 27, 2009, inspired me to compile this list, and I admit that it has caused me to reconsider the crime of the number one entry. The girl's name has not been released to date, as she is 15 years old, but the accounts of the crime all agree, and it is beyond belief. For 2.5 hours, while the high school homecoming dance was taking place inside the gymnasium, approximately 10 men gang raped the 15-year-old student, beating her savagely the whole time. All the while, 10 others stood around laughing and taking pictures with their cell phones. The crowd eventually numbered more than 20, and no one called the police. No one went inside to tell a security guard or a policeman, several of which were on the campus at the time. A little earlier, the assistant principal looked out his office window and saw 12 to 15 grown men sitting around near the scene of the crime, none of whom had identification badges, as is required, and none of whom appeared to be a teenager. And the assistant principal did not call the police, or alert any teachers or students. He returned to his job and ignored them. The girl is still in critical condition at the hospital, having been found later by someone leaving the dance.
You can stop these incidents from happening. All you have to do is
Acknowledge,
Assess,
act.